All right, this is my interview now with Erich Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. You're listening to One Dimitri Radio on blogtalkradio.com. Enjoy. I'm recording this on Tuesday, January 5, 2016. The president today started getting all weepy as he proposed new gun regulations to supposedly eliminate loopholes and to make us safer and this, that, and the other. And I have to confess that even though I'm a libertarian and I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment, I don't understand all the nuance, all the ins and outs regarding gun rules, regulations, laws, what exactly the president is proposing. And I thought, well, who would know? And I thought, well, Gun Owners of America, of course. And I thought, well, if I can get in touch with Erich Pratt, he's the executive director of Gun Owners of America. Gun Owners of America is sort of like the NRA on steroids. They take no prisoners, and that's kind of what I like, especially for any kind of guest on One Dimitri Radio. So I reached out to Gun Owners of America, got in touch with Erich Pratt, and I said, look, I know this is short notice, but the president started getting all weepy over this stuff, so it's a big news story, so would you be willing to come on and talk with our listeners about this? And Erich Pratt said, yeah, sure, of course. So, Erich Pratt, welcome to One Dimitri Radio. How you doing?
Doing great, Dimitri. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Indeed. Again, thank you. And tell me, why was the president getting all weepy over this thing? Did you see his news conference today?
I did. And, sadly what we see frequently is anti-gun liberals love to use the emotion, especially when they don't have the facts. And we can go through a lot of his talk, and it was just one untruth after another. But when you don't have the facts, you use emotion. And obviously he's talking about very sober things, when he's talking about people who have died. But, the thing we have to understand is that none of the actions that he's put forward are going to make us any safer. France, for example, has more gun control than anything the president put forward today. And yet terrorists were still able to get guns and massacre people there. Gun control is not going to keep us safer, especially since he's really not going after punishing bad guys. This is all about putting restrictions on law-abiding people.
What kind of restrictions is he proposing with this?
Well, for example, he is getting as close as he can to pushing universal background checks. Universal registration is really what that is, where every buyer has to have their name phoned in to the FBI. Now, look, this is not going to keep us safer. California has universal background checks where even private sellers, if they're selling, you're somebody and you want to sell to your neighbor, or maybe it could even apply, I suppose, inside of families, but you have to get that run through a background check. California has universal background checks, but that didn't stop the San Bernardino shooters from getting guns. What the president has done now is, even if you sell one or two guns without a background check, you could now be spending 5 years in jail and fined $250,000. And he's done this in defiance of what the law says, because the law says that if you are engaged in the business, that this is your primary means of making money, this is something that you spend considerable time and effort for as part of your profession, then you have to be a dealer. You have to get an FFL. But somebody, a private citizen who has bought firearms and then they want to sell them, just like we might sell a car because you want the cash. Well, now you could end up in jail if you don't run a background check. This is an egregious violation of the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms.
Well, also, as I understood the proposal, it's not only for somebody who wants to buy a gun, but also give it like to his son or daughter, because anytime there's an exchange, and please correct me if I'm wrong, now even if you want to give it to your child, you have to get essentially the permission of the government. Is that right?
That's my understanding of that there's no qualifications to the contrary. So absolutely, you would need to, anytime you transfer that firearm, you're potentially in danger of 5 years in jail, $250,000 fine, and the president was clear in his decree that this could even apply to people who sell only 1 or 2 guns. So basically what he's done with guns in pushing people to universal background registration checks is similar to what he did with Obamacare, where Obamacare was a first step, as he himself said, to get us to universal single-payer health care. Well, that's exactly what's happening here. He doesn't per se come out and require universal background checks, but what will happen is you will always be looking over your shoulder if you do sell a gun privately, wondering if this is part of a sting operation because, oh, by the way, guess what? He's also calling for hundreds of additional ATF agents to enforce this.
Well, maybe he needs all those extra ATF agents to find out where all those guns went in Mexico with the that fiasco with Eric Holder a while back.
Well, and there's the hypocrisy, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because who is one of the biggest movers of firearms into illegal hands? Wasn't it our administration who was given the green light to all these sales that they were supposedly going to track, and of course they lost track of them, and even one of our border agents ended up getting killed with one of these firearms. So the absolute hypocrisy for him then to turn around and basically blame the law-abiding citizen and say, well, you're going to have to submit to more restrictions, or here's the sword of Damocles hanging over your head. You're going to spend time in jail and huge fines.
Well, this seems to be actually worse than Obamacare in the sense that at least Obamacare, even though it's an abomination, at least Obamacare was voted on in Congress. It was actually passed as a law and enacted with his signature. What I don't understand, Eric, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't understand the Constitution or anything like that, but I always thought that Congress was where the legislation came from, and that the president, any president, can't just make up laws pulling them out of his butt.
Dimitri, you must think that because you actually paid attention in government class in high school. Yeah, that's called the separation of powers. Congress is supposed to pass legislation. Congress is the one that makes rules. The executive department enforces rules that have been passed by Congress. We don't have tyrants in this country or kings where they make up the rules and then enforce the rules. I mean, that totally blurs, in fact, more than blurs, runs roughshod over our separation of powers. He's totally circumventing the Congress. And that's one of the things that we're going to be doing. In addition to pursuing legal action, we're also going to be working with legislators to make sure that this gets defunded. And that's actually an idea, a pattern in practice that works. And we did that with Clinton, for example, when he unilaterally passed an FBI tax on gun buyers. We worked through the Congress to defund it, to cut funding for the enforcement of that FBI gun tax. And guess what? It is still the law today, and that's why there is no FBI gun tax. And so in doing this, it's a very good way of getting it by a president, because they typically don't want to shut down a government for the sake of one little rider. And that's, the power of the purse is how you get things accomplished. And so that's what we're going to be working with Congress to do. But this is simply egregious how he's just ignored his role. And basically he has said, well, if Congress is not going to act, which, by the way, they did act. They voted on many of the proposals that he has put forward, and they said no. And that expresses the will of the American people, and yet that's not good enough for him because he didn't get what he wanted.
Well, where is he going to get the money to fund this thing? Because, again, he has no authority regarding the purse strings. So what difference does it make what he says if there's no money to fund this?
Well, I suppose that would take it to a new level, but even this president has to succumb to the fact if there's no money to actually pay for something, well, then, he's going to have to take it from somewhere else, I suppose, and then that becomes another legal battle in of itself. And we'll be glad to fight that battle. We're happy to have him be on the defensive as we continue to take this to them. But, you know, again, there's going to be many avenues, and honestly, you know, the number one best option is we just need a new president from a different party, because Hillary is not much different. And quite frankly, we think this was a huge miscalculation on his part. He doesn't realize how badly he's out of step with the American people. A recent ABC Washington Post poll shows that more Americans want concealed carry than they do stricter gun laws. So he's way out of step with this as a response to terrorism. And so what he's going to see, we think, is that come November, the party, the candidate of his party may be, you know, doing something else other than sitting in the White House.
Indeed. I'm talking with Erich Pratt, and he's the Executive Director of Gun Owners of America, based in Virginia. And by the way, speaking of Virginia, a little bit later on, I want to talk to you about what on earth is Virginia doing now regarding the reciprocity thing with other states regarding gun permits. We'll get to that in a bit, but more with this. My big concern, Eric, is that, yes, you're willing to fight. An awful lot of people who believe in the Second Amendment are willing to fight in Congress to stop this, but there's one group in Congress that is not willing to fight to take on the president, and that is the Republicans. They cave into everything that the president wants. I mean, that's a fact. You can look it up. And so what makes you think that Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan are going to find any sort of backbone, any set of brass you-know-whats, to actually stand up to this president when they obviously have not stood up to him ever?
Well, the Republican Party has been a continual frustration, because you're right. They do lack spines, many of them. And quite frankly, we are all too happy to have them primaried. Heck, we supported the opponent to Senator McConnell in his last primary. While Matt Bevin lost, he went on to become governor. So he's maybe now in a better position to make a challenge like this. You know, quite frankly, we take no prisoners, Dimitri. If you know, if it's a Republican who's not willing to stand up and do what's right, we will support a challenge against him.
But that's too late. But that's too late. Now, Eric, I understand what you're saying. Believe me, I get it. But that's too late, because this is going to be going into, in fact, I guess it's considered law now, even though it's just coming from the president and not from Congress. But what you're talking about, you know, replacing Mitch McConnell, well, he's there for 6 years, and then he'll probably retire. Paul Ryan's going to be there for a while. And so in the meantime, what can you do? What can anyone who cares about the Second Amendment and gun control do right now to overcome the biggest challenge, which is not President Obama, but that there's no principled opposition to him in Congress, even though Republicans control both houses, or both the chambers of Congress?
Well, see, the only thing you can do is replace the wimps. And, you know, look, if there's no hope, then what are we doing here? You know, I'll go home and find something else to do. But the only thing we can do is fight, and we're going to fight on principle. And principle means that we will oppose people in both parties if we have to. And, you know, I think the American people are getting restless enough. They'll turn on whoever it is. If they're not going to stand up and keep their oath of office, they'll put them out on their ear. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but, you know, we have losses up here. There are times that, you know, elections have consequences, and there are times that we lose on policy. There's other times, however, that we win. We have defeated a lot of gun control. In fact, we beat back the president last year on an ammunition ban. We were able to repeal the ban on so-called assault weapons. We were able to make sure that ban was not reenacted. So we do have victories up here, and it's easy when you're in the midst of losing a battle to say, oh, you know, to throw up the white flag and say we've lost the war. But I don't think we're at that point yet. We have not lost the war, and I truly believe this was a miscalculation on his part, because pro-gun Democrats will cross party lines to vote for another party based on the gun issue alone. And so for Obama to do this in an election year, we think is going to be potentially devastating.
Well, that all depends on what his motivation is, because one thing about President Obama is he's a great campaigner. Terrible administrator, but as a campaigner, all that community organizing really did pay off. I mean, his campaigning skills are unbelievable. I mean, they're off the charts. So what if that the Second Amendment guys and gals are playing checkers, but President Obama's actually playing chess? And the real issue here, the real game here, is not this proposed legislation or law or whatever you want to call this thing, this executive order from our king, but instead as a great way to raise money from the left because, oh, well, this is a hot button issue and it can stir up the base, and you can't stir up the base anymore with gay marriage because the Supreme Court took it off the table for both parties, actually. So maybe this is actually a way for President Obama to raise a heck of a lot of money from his base because they get energized over stuff like this. Could that be what's really going on, Eric?
Well, I do think, Dimitri, that the luster is worn off. 7 years ago when people weren't as familiar with him, a lot of people thought he was a rock star. That's not the case anymore, and his polling numbers indicated, yeah, he's to a certain degree mobilizing his base, but this is such a powerful issue, again, because there are many pro-gun Democrats. He's also mobilizing people against his party, and that's going to come back to bite them.
I think this could really harm Hillary Clinton, because wasn't it Bill Clinton who said in, I think it was 2000 or so, that one of the big problems with Democrats winning was they made such an issue of gun control that they lost a lot of the blue-collar Democrats. Didn't Bill Clinton actually make that observation not that long ago?
Absolutely. In fact, after 1994, when he lost control of the Congress, he said on several occasions, probably too many to recount, at least half a dozen separate occasions, that it was his gun control policies that cost him the control of the Congress. And then Lieberman, the vice presidential candidate to Gore, said the same thing about Al Gore losing the election in 2000. He said there are a lot of people who agree with us on every issue except for one, and that's the gun issue, and as a result, they voted for Bush. And that's what I'm saying. This is such a powerful issue, unlike others. I mean, there's other hot-button issues out there, but not where there are so many people who have a vested interest because they stand to lose a very tangible item. I mean, guns are not cheap. And the irony is that the president, in all his attacks on the Second Amendment and gun rights, has done more to mobilize gun owners, more to promote the gun culture, more to help sell firearms than any other person in the country alive today in the past decade. Yep. He is truly the gun salesman of the decade.
Indeed. George Will on the Fox News channel, a special report with Bret Baier, made an observation. I forget which gun manufacturer, but during the 7 years with the Obama administration, the worth of a stock of the gun manufacturer went up some, crazy numbers, incredible increase in the value of the stock. And that's certainly because so many people are afraid of what this president is trying to do, and it's really made an incredible impact. I'm talking with Erich Pratt. He's the executive director, Gun Owners of America. He's been the executive director there 25 years. He's been on many radio, TV outlets, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and now the pinnacle of his career, One Dimitri Radio. So it's great to have him here. One other issue with this gun proposal with President Obama, and that's something that I brought up on One Dimitri Radio, and that is, I think a lot of people are missing an issue that's even bigger than the Second Amendment, and that is our right of privacy. One of the proposals, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Health and Human Services is saying that the HIPAA privacy rule now can be violated by the government, which means that anyone who goes to any doctor, any type of medical professional, and has any sort of mental health question, issue, whatever, even alcoholism or depression or whatever, now is going to be reported, and that name is going to be sent to the National Gun Registry. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is atrocious. Obviously, nobody wants wackos with guns, but no one should lose their constitutionally protected rights without due process. And everything you just laid out is exactly what's happening, because good people who have committed no crimes and have never been adjudicated in a court of law as being mentally incompetent or have been adjudicated as committing a crime are going to lose their gun rights. In fact, already have. It's actually already happened through the Veterans Administration with military veterans, suffering with PTSD and things like that. Almost 200,000 of them have lost their gun rights as a result. And now he wants to, and this is actually where Obamacare comes in, because all that medical information is now being centralized, and by removing the HIPAA protections, now FBI and ATF can access that data. In a similar move, as part of these regs, Obama is going after seniors who are receiving their Social Security benefits, and seniors who have somebody handling their financial affairs because maybe they can't balance a checkbook and things like that. They're now going to lose their gun rights. Well, my goodness, if you can lose your gun rights because you can't balance a checkbook, then the entire Congress should lose their gun rights.
Amen to that. Tell me, can you name one Republican in a leadership position in the House or the Senate that is a strong Second Amendment supporter? One.
Well, certainly Ted Cruz.
No.
You said leadership.
Leadership.
Well, now that now here's the difference between voting right and action and having, let's say, a good grade with Gun Owners of America, or versus being in leadership and really pressing. For example, John Cornyn of Texas has a pretty good grade on gun issues, and he did come out today and say we're going to use the power of the purse to defund these executive orders. Okay, we're going to hold him to that, and we're going to work with him and help him get all the support he needs, so that Republicans in the Senate do not weenie out, because that's what they are so good at doing. But it's good to see that there are some who are now stepping forward to take the president on. We'll see. We'll get back, Dimitri, in a couple of months and see where we're at with this.
What about Paul Ryan? What's his record regarding the Second Amendment? Now he's the House Speaker.
Well, before he became House Speaker, it was very mixed. He's good, I would say, most of the time, but then there are times where he supports infringements. And now, thankfully, we hear him saying the right things. And at a minimum, he's miffed that the president is exercising legislative power. Okay, so we'll work with that. If it's only that basis alone that you're going to rein him in, that's fine. We were disappointed to see that he was the next speaker, because quite frankly, there was a lot of other good potential folks who could have run for that office, and for whatever reason, many of them didn't want to. And so it is what it is. He's the speaker, and we're going to work with him and put the heat on him. And that's something that we do especially well with Republicans. When we killed the gun control proposals in 2013, right after the tragic Sandy Hook shooting, the New York Times said it was Gun Owners of America putting heat on the Congress that caused many Republicans to stiffen up and stop compromising with the Democrats, and that's why they voted all those proposals down. There were actually other gun organizations that were trying to work out a deal. It was Gun Owners of America that said, no, we're standing with the Second Amendment. There will be no compromise, or we will hold you accountable. And then that's actually what ended up happening. Their spines stiffened up when they started getting inundated with phone calls back home from the district, and they said no to gun control. I mean, on the one hand, it's a shame that we have to spend all that time, effort, and money to put the heat on people who should be doing the right thing anyway. On the other hand, it's nice that we have a political process where people have to return home and get reelected, and it's that threat of getting defeated at the polls that we can hold over them.
Is Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, pro-gun, strong pro-gun?
Dimitri, we campaigned for him back in the 80s when he ran for Senate. And for a while, he was pro-gun. But as he got into the leadership, closer and closer to leadership, that's when the compromises started. Right now, I would have to say he is mixed. And as I told you earlier, so we supported Matt Bevin to challenge him, who's now the governor of Kentucky.
How did Mitch McConnell win that election then?
You're talking about against Matt Bevin?
Yes.
Well, it's a sad thing the way politics works, but you get, all the old guard rallying around you, and who is this newbie? They think he didn't have a good chance, which actually he did very well. But now as governor, it's maybe a whole new game. And even if you're right that he ends up retiring, then that means we'll get new blood in the leadership. And ultimately it comes down to people at home have to hold their guys accountable. And if they're willing to just keep voting them in and sending them back to Congress, then you know what? We get what we deserve. I mean, honestly, we get what we deserve. Because ultimately we can fire our elected representatives and senators, and that's how you send a message.
Indeed. I'm talking with Erich Pratt. He's Executive Director, Gun Owners of America. Picture the NRA on steroids, and they certainly take very strong, uncompromising positions on the Second Amendment. Before we get to what's going on in your home state there in Virginia, which was kind of bizarre from the little that I know about it, one last thing about politics. Again, we're recording this interview on Tuesday, January 5, 2016. The Iowa caucuses are going to be happening in about a month. You got New Hampshire shortly after that. In the Republican primary, is Donald Trump really that pro-Second Amendment?
Well, to hear him talk, he certainly sounds like it. However, in past years, he has not been that pro-gun. That's what certainly gave us pause. That's why one reason why we did not endorse him. We, as you know, endorsed Ted Cruz, who's actually always been strong on the Second Amendment and other constitutional issues. I mean, so there's no well, he's grown. Now he sees the light, but he didn't before. Because that always makes you nervous. I mean, is this just a political conversion to get votes from a particular party? I mean, because Trump has been basically a Democrat most of his adult life. So, if he ends up the one who becomes president, we certainly hope that he stands to the rhetoric that he's been using. Because, and let me tell you, I mean, he sounds like a rootin' tootin', I'm going to repeal all these executive orders, and we'll hold them to that. This is what you campaigned on, so now we're going to hold you to it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that even Governor Ronald Reagan, governor of California, was in favor of gun control when he saw that the Black Panthers were able to walk around with loaded weapons legally. And so then he decided to become a gun grabber and voted for gun control because he was afraid of the Black Panthers. And yet, I guess he changed when he came to Washington. But I am intrigued by Trump because I don't know, the stuff, dallying with Democrats. Well, he's a businessman in New York City. So that's, he better be nice to Democrats. He better be darn nice to Democrats or he's not going to get anything. And I don't know how much of this that he's saying he believes. It certainly looks as if he believes all of this. And, maybe he does. I don't know. Other than Cruz and maybe Trump, is there anyone who is that strong in the Second Amendment?
Well, certainly Rand Paul would have been very good on Second Amendment issues. He just hasn't gotten the traction. He's way down in the polls. And I think Marco Rubio's pretty solid. I mean, we had issues with Rubio on some other matters, but I think when it comes to pure Second Amendment issues, he's real good too. But again, I think right now it's become a horse race between Trump and Cruz.
Yeah, and either way, at least they both talk a good game regarding the Second Amendment, and Cruz does have a longer track record. So I'll tell you who scares me, Chris Christie. Chris Christie, what do you think of him on the Second Amendment?
He's the kind of guy who, if you put enough heat and pressure on him, he tends to do the right thing. And so after weighing in on him a lot, we've seen him pardon people in his state who have been unduly prosecuted for simply possessing firearms and committing no violence. One gal, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but the gal from Philadelphia who had a concealed carry permit and was arrested in New Jersey. People like that who've committed no violent crime, we've had to put a lot of heat and pressure on them, but somebody like Obama, I mean, we've never had a lobbying campaign on Obama because we just knew it would be fruitless. I mean, he's not going to listen to you. So, but here's the thing. I mean, with a Christie, I mean, why have somebody like that who you're going to have to put so much heat and pressure on? It'd be much nicer to have somebody who already knows what the right thing to do is.
Indeed. In fact, you had mentioned about concealed carry, and that's a good segue for what I think is going on in Virginia. Now, you've got a Democrat governor now, McAuliffe. Is that his name, McAuliffe?
McAuliffe, yes, Terry McAuliffe.
What exactly did he do now regarding gun ownership and reciprocity with other states? I'm kind of vague on this, but it sounded like a big deal, but I didn't see much in the way of news coverage on this.
Yeah, there certainly was here in Virginia, and this is actually something that affects Pennsylvania because what the governor and the attorney general working together did was basically say, there's a lot of states that Virginia has reciprocity agreements with, and in their state, states like Pennsylvania and others, you guys just don't have the same rigorous type of background checks that we do. So we're just not going to recognize citizens from your state here in Virginia. Now, as a result, what that means is immediately when this goes into effect on February 1st, for starters, there will be 6 states that immediately will discontinue recognizing Virginia residents in their state. And actually, Pennsylvania is one of them. But then there's another 19 states that McAuliffe has said we're just not going to recognize so if there's a citizen from your state here, he cannot carry in this state. And so we may see, the kind of the unreciprocity wars where now these other states are saying, well, we're not going to recognize you. But, here again, you've got Democrats getting together, putting their pointy heads together, trying to figure out how, without the consent of the legislature, they can take unilateral action to restrict firearms. And mind you, all of this is happening in a climate where our murder rate in this country has been dropping precipitously for years. It's really an amazing thing. Since Obama came into office, the number of concealed carry permit holders has tripled in this country, and yet the murder rate has been cut by 25%. But see, that doesn't make any difference to them. They still are thinking of ways of how to restrict Second Amendment rights, because really to them, it's not about the facts. It's all about their anti-gun agenda, and that's really, they lie to get elected, and then now in the last year of office, you see Obama really dropping the cloak and coming out of the closet. And same thing is happening here in Virginia.
Well, here's the thing in Virginia. Here's my guess, and you tell me because obviously you are there with Gun Owners of America. I'm talking with Erich Pratt here on One Dimitri Radio. My guess is that the Democrat governor of Virginia was able to get away with this because, once again, the Republicans who control the House of Delegates and the Senate let him get away with it, just like the rhinos in Congress let the president get away with stuff. If that's true, then it says to me, Erich, that the big problem is either the president or the governor, but the bigger problem is the Republicans who let them do it.
Well, we'll see. I mean, right now they're out of session. They'll be coming into session soon, so we'll see if they let them get away with this. Already, one senator, or Republican Senator Carrico, is saying, you know what, if the governor doesn't want people with guns, then we're going to cut funding for his protective detail. Now, we applaud that, and we will push for that 100%. But, if we get back together, you and I, in 3 months and nothing has happened, then, you're absolutely right. It was just Republicans being spineless again. Obviously you've got a few good apples in that bunch, but it'll just have meant that they were overrun by a leadership that just wants to go along and get along. Part of our job is we're going to try to light a fire under them, and we are going to make an issue of this. Again, we do win battles. We lose some, we win one, but you know what? We are going to fight and do our darndest to really make a difference. And one of the ways that we can do it, just like we backed Obama off that ammunition ban last year, if we create enough heat, we'll see if we can't defund this executive action that the governor took here last month.
I'm intrigued by what you mentioned there. Is this a serious proposal that if the governor doesn't change his mind there, then he will lose his armed security guards?
Senator Carrico says he is introducing that this month. And Gun Owners of America is 100% behind that. I mean, it's time to fight fire with fire. Okay, you guys don't like it. You know, it's like Obama lecturing all of us about how dangerous guns are when he's surrounded by them. He is the most well-protected man in this country, and he has the audacity to tell us that guns really don't make you safer. He said this in one of his speeches. We need to get over this notion that guns make you safer. Okay. I would say, all right, let's start firing his Secret Service detail.
Yeah, disarm them and see how they do. And they've got enough problems. The Secret Service already has enough problems with all their drinking and whoring and everything else. So now try to protect the president without guns. Good luck with that. Well, Eric, I could talk with you all night long. I really could. You're a marvelous guest. Erich Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. It's like the NRA on steroids, unapologetic, unflinching, just absolutely refuses to back down. That's pretty much how I see Gun Owners of America. So here at One Dimitri Radio, I always give my guest the last word to speak directly to our listeners. So, Erich Pratt, I'm going to give you the microphone. Say whatever you want to say directly to my listener, and please feel free to promote any book or website or crowdfunding thing, anything you want. This is your opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, Erich Pratt.
Well, Dimitri, thank you so much for having me. This has truly been a pleasure. And, you know, the best way that people can find out about Gun Owners of America is go to our website at gunowners.org. I encourage you to sign up for our free email alerts. That is what has been so instrumental in defeating gun control during Obama's presidency. And, you know, let's face it, the more activists we have, the louder voice we have in Washington. So it's a low-volume service. We don't inundate people's inboxes with emails, but when it comes to things like what's happening this week, this is when we alert our members. Also, if you're on Facebook, like us on our Facebook page at Gun Owners. We have a lot of very useful information and very interesting articles, including self-defense stories up there as well.
And your Gun Owners of America website, what is that again, please?
Gun Owners with an S, gunowners.org.
Gunowners.org. It's not GOA.org?
No, it's not.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
That'll take you somewhere else.
Oops. Oops. Sorry about that. Here I was trying to be helpful, and I'm directing him to some other site, probably some porn site or something. I'm sorry. Jeez. Erich Pratt, always a pleasure. Please give my best to Larry. Keep up the good work. And if there's anything that we can do here at One Dimitri Radio to help you spread the word, to help you defend the Second Amendment, please, please just ask, and we will do whatever we can. All right?
Will do. Thank you so much, Dimitri.
Erich Pratt, thank you.